Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of the Innervated. Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of the Innervated, a new Hearthstone talk show produced and hosted by yours truly, GosuGamers is Nidra. Since this is our first debut, I think a short introduction is in order. This show will air every Monday at 9 CET. And where me and my dear co-host here will tackle the hot topics of last week's Hearthstone, and all things that happen on the scene. Our intention is to leave all political correctness at the door and bring you our own honest thoughts and basically discuss everything in an open and frank manner, leaving all sugarcoating and fluff at the door. There will be criticism where criticism is due, and vice versa where praise is deserved, right? So I believe that this show is needed, and I hope you guys will have a good time. Each show will run about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. So I really hope you guys have a good time. So to introduce you, my guest, we have Skim Gaming, one of my former colleagues at GosuGamers.net. He was the former Dota 2 leader at the site, and he's an avid follower of the Hearthstone scene as well. I actually wanted to find you guys some hot Asian chick, but I couldn't find any, so I got you the next best thing. Skim, how are you doing today, mate?
Hey man, thanks for having me. Looking very much forward to this.
Okay, so next we have Stodex, Nico van der Naab, one of my current colleagues at GosuGamers, one of the more opinionated writers in our crew. He likes to talk about ladder a lot and why he doesn't like it. He also likes to talk about matchmaking, grading, and why he doesn't like this as well, and all kinds of announcements that don't bring any improvements to these particular two topics. Yeah, but he likes Hearthstone. I can assure you. He just feels that it can be way better. Starex, how are you today, man?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay, and finally, we have the Chiv. If you guys have been playing Hearthstone since the early days and have participated in the old Mana Grind tournaments, you probably know the guy. He was one of the driving cogwheels of these, open tournaments of old. Um, now he's working with Noxious on the Mechatork workshop, inventing the Hearthstone cards of tomorrow. And actually, some of your cards have already been made as actual cards in Blackrock Mountain, right? Or in GVG, was it?
They got made in GVG, Black Rock Mountain, and matter of fact, a couple of them that we were working on for the adventure mode that me and Knox are doing right now. Blizzard also came up with those too, and we are like, well, thank you for stealing our thunder.
How does it even work? Like, do they come to you guys to say, hey, we like this idea, so we're just gonna take it? Or,
No,
no?
no. Most of the time, Blizzard has these cards designed months, and I do mean
Yeah.
months in advance. They're normally like 2 sets ahead from what we can kind of figure out here. So what we're doing is like we're coming up with stuff, and it's amazing how on par we are with them.
Nice.
So I'm going to give Blizzard the credit because they're really doing all of this. I mean, we're just coming up with fun ways of presenting it and showing possibilities.
It's quite fun though that you guys can actually design similar cards, and actually sometimes it's absolutely identical. I think the Flame Waker was just like one by one copy, right? But anyway,
Grim Patron was kind of similar to like an Unstable Corruption we did, except for the stats were a little bit different, but it was pretty spot on.
yeah, follow these guys. These guys are predicting the future of Hearthstone, and make sure to follow the Mechatork workshop. So we'll talk about awesome cards in this show, maybe, or if we don't find the time in another episode. But we have a couple of topics prepared for you today, guys. Starting is something that happened on Tuesday. You can see the topic in the overlay, and it's for one short night. This was the drama of the Hearthstone scene. I'm talking about the Infused dropping their Hearthstone roster in, I would say, some funny and bizarre circumstances. So for those of our readers who don't really know what happened, the story actually started when Simon Welch, aka Sodal, who was one of Infused's most prominent players and one of UK's brightest hopes in Hearthstone, he said on stream that he and all his teammates will be leaving the Team Infused organization. Team Infused is one of the is a UK-based organization that has multiple rosters in various games. So when he told this story, he said that there will be several versions of it. He said that some people will say they were released, other people will say that the players left on their own volition. Ultimately, these stories did appear, and I just want to bring out this Twitter. When we reported actually the news first, and we reached out to Team Infused for a comment, they said this pretty funny thing that they have since deleted. And I quote, "We have no current plans to return to Hearthstone, as feel the game is about luck of the draw. We will look at other game options." So I've seen a lot of parting of ways in Hearthstone and in other esports, but this tweet was pretty funny. Skim, you've seen a lot of this in Dota. Obviously, teams, players partnered with organizations. Have you ever seen such a bizarre reason? Obviously, you cannot really talk about Dota because nobody can really say this about Dota, but as far as weird statements go, where does this rank?
This ranks very high up on the scale. Usually you have your standard, oh, there was we didn't have the same goals, we didn't really know where to go with the future, and we wish everyone the best of luck and whatever. The sort of standard stuff you just write when you have press releases. But I mean, at least they're honest about it. If that's their opinion, at least they're honest about it. Got to give it to them.
Do you think like this is, because we said it's a weird reason. How legitimate is this in the long run and for other organizations? Because as you said, that they kind of have a point, right? It's a volatile, it's a random game, so you cannot really expect there to be a roster that consistently brings in results. Because in other games which are, let's say, less random and more skill based, like StarCraft, League of Legends, Dota, you kind of know like when a player is good or when team is good, he will bring consistent results at least most of the time. In Hearthstone, you can never know. So when you're investing in a player, you're kind of investing in a guy that plays with RNG and die roll. So, you say,
Well, yeah, that's true, but that's not all what esports is. I mean, sure, in an ideal setting, you have somebody who's very charismatic and who also gets a ton of results, like who places first in every tournament. But esports is just much more than that. You kind of want more than just tournament results. Obviously, you also want exposure. A lot of teams these days focus on streaming numbers, especially in Hearthstone. A lot of organizers and a lot of sponsors, they want to see that you are active on Twitch, that you have a lot of viewers, that you have a lot of subscribers, that you have a lot of media pull. And especially for Hearthstone, this factor of I've talked to a lot of sponsors actually, and they don't really consider the competitive side of Hearthstone to be that important when it comes to signing players. So I was actually kind of confused that they said that about Hearthstone, because it seems to me like they didn't even try to they didn't really try to make their team more than just competitive players. They didn't really market the players, and were just like they're not getting any results anyway, so you're just gonna let them go.
That's not even true, because Subtle finished top 4 in Gfinity, Exploding Cow finished top 2 at Insomnia 54. The other guys also did well in Insomnia 54, and Merge, their only German player, was in the EPS series, I think, in 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So they were already marketing themselves, I think, pretty well. So this is another reason why I think this was kind of a baffling statement, as you say. Shiv, what do you make of it?
I actually have a very different opinion on this. I think it's kind of a cop-out on them. All right? We all know that Hearthstone has RNG. Every card game has RNG. Hearthstone just has a lot more to it. But what makes the difference between like your average player and a skilled player is managing that RNG. All right, you look at players like Orange. All right, they're consistently doing good. You look at Tice, consistently doing good. When you look at the overall statistics of a player in an environment with RNG, you start actually seeing which ones are breaking away and which ones are stagnating. So to say that a game is too luck-based, I think is kind of a cop-out for a team. That's my personal opinion on it. I don't agree with it. I think it was just damage control to kind of mitigate some other circumstances.
How do you think they should have handled it in this way? Like, should have they said, okay, it's that they weren't bringing good results? Because this is actually something that they could have refuted easily, because they were actually putting results. So let's say you're Team Infused market PR manager, right? So what do you make of this? Like, how do you approach this damage control? And I think the last game, okay, he's back.
There's a couple ways they could have approached it. I mean, they could have said if they had somebody basically get sniped by another team, then it's like, well, we're sorry to see him go, and we wish him the best of luck. You always take the higher road approach. But this here kind of seems like taking the lower road approach, which I don't agree with. It just doesn't look good in a professional environment. So,
it's then. As this happened, a few hours later, the story actually developed. Some players that left Infused left their own statements about why they left the team. Most of them were pretty neutral, I would say. I think Aqua Blood was saying like, okay, my expectations didn't meet that of the organizations, so we're kind of splitting ways. But one particular guy, Michael Rosen, aka Micher, Miher, I'm not sure how this is pronounced, so sorry, Michael. He just went ham on them, and I didn't really expect this. He said this on April 7, and I quote, "I'm usually not one for dirty laundry, but his statement makes me laugh a bit," talking about the look of the draw, and as well as Infused other statement where they said that they would actually part with their team in 3 months' time. It was, they kind of said it was about to happen. So he said, I'm not usually not one for dirty laundry, but this statement makes me laugh a bit. In my entire 10 years in esports, I haven't been in a worse run organization ever. So obviously this is quite a strong statement, and he did elaborate in our reporting. If you go to GosuGamers and look for our reporting on the scene, he pasted like what was, I think, like a 300, 400 word statement, mentioning stuff that happened with Infused and how they weren't really managed and represented well. Altercations with the team at offline events, how they didn't get any help from the organization to be brought to tournaments. No travel support, no peripherals. Like usually you get headsets or hoodies or whatever, but they didn't really get this until like later in their commitment to the organization. So it kind of like threw a lot of dirt on Infused, and a lot of people started building a bad image of the organization in their minds. Like the question here is, I guess, like another thing also appeared that they weren't contracted. So it was all like a handshake agreement. They were promised that they would come back and talk about getting stuff when they bring up results. They were bringing results, and then Infused didn't give them back. So it was kind of like a like a shitty, basically shitty deal for the Infused guys, and a lot of the community that was reading this, I think, left build a wrong, bad impression about Infused. How do you guys think that Infused will come out of Hearthstone, of this incident? Like, is their brand basically damaged in the eyes of the community, or like if they decide to come back to Hearthstone at one point, do you think that they can do it successfully? Having made the statements that they did, Sorex?
I guess that won't be a problem. If you follow the Hearthstone scene, it's like there's drama every week, and soon this will be forgotten, and nobody will care anymore when they get back in like half a year or so. So I don't think it's too harsh on them.
I'm not too sure about that. I don't know. Just from experience, like in the Dota scene, when stuff like this happens, usually people remember this for like years. Like in 4 years, when Infuse is going to be back, there's going to be this one guy that just links to a thread or an article. There's always going to be that one guy that just if I'm that guy, I link to this sort of stuff because I will remember that. And honestly, I mean, not signing contracts with players, like what the hell? This is definitely gonna be in the back of everybody's heads right now. Like everybody who's witnessed this live is gonna remember this as soon as Infused comes back to Hearthstone. And quite frankly, Infused didn't have the best of reputations overall in esports, if I remember. I at least know they didn't have the best reputation in Dota anyway, so I'm not too sure if anybody was actually that happy about Infused overall. So if anything, yeah, sure, this was really bad for them, but it's just, the icing on the cake.
For the esports veterans that have been here for a longer time, they kind of expected it, I guess. Like, you always hope for the best. Okay, this time they might not screw up, but it happens. You mentioned about the contracts, and this is actually something that I think we need to talk a bit about more. And obviously none of the players was contracted. This was confirmed by various sources and the players themselves and people from inside the organization. So why, as a Hearthstone player, okay, obviously you want to get exposure in some way, like get support from organization, but why in the world would you ever enter a handshake agreement? Like an organization promises, we'll talk at some time after you bring results, but they never tell you what these results really mean, so you don't really know the yardstick you should pass before coming back to them for negotiations. It kind of builds like a very shaky agreement between organization and players that I think should never exist. But there have been multiple cases. In fact, when we talked to some of my colleagues in fantasy who should have been here, but he broke his toe because he's retarded. So sorry, fantasy, you need to learn to walk. So he basically said that if you go down below the top 6 or 7 teams in Hearthstone, the big ones, the Archons, the Cloud9s, you will encounter a lot of these situations where players and teams have no contractual binding to each other. And in fact, this goes even back to bigger teams like Meteor Makers. Like some of their players were not contracted or not salaried. Not salaried, at least I think that they had contracts, but they didn't have, we will give you this for your results. That they were obviously bound by contracts, but not one that expressed salary. But if you go even deeper down, there are a lot of instances like Infused, like just organization and players being, we'll just stick to each other and see what happens. Skim?
Yeah, I think a big issue in that regard is that Hearthstone is just the first esport for most people involved. Like, a lot of people that are involved in Hearthstone have never really been part of any esports scene. They haven't really been following StarCraft too much. They haven't really necessarily been following Dota or League of Legends in terms of esports that much. So a lot of people, they're just not sure what to expect or how things go. Like, they don't know that they have to sign contracts, obviously, if they want to make things official. They don't know what they can expect out of contracts. They don't know that they can technically still get screwed over even if they sign the contract. So I think it just comes down to a lot of immaturity and just, like, not in a negative way, but just the fact that people don't know better. And unfortunately, this is a learning lesson for the Hearthstone scene. Like, that this, I'm pretty sure this won't happen again. At least like this, to this extent, that nobody's going to sign a contract. I'm pretty sure this is not going to happen again in Hearthstone. Unfortunately, the scene sort of like had to learn by itself that these sort of things happen with MYM, with Infused, and they're going to learn from this and they're going to grow from this. So this is something that basically every esports scene went through at some point. Every scene had some sort of like organization that fucked them over by, like, oh, hey, we're going to promise this shit ton of money, but guess what? We're not going to pay. And this is going to happen again. It's going to happen over and over again. But it's, it's a lesson that you have to learn. And I want to say it's fortunately enough that it's not as bad as it could have been. I think this could have been a lot worse for the people involved. So I'm kind of glad that it was only just that.
At least At least there's no breaking of contract, because we've seen this a lot as well. Like, players actually signing contracts and then, getting glide and screwed over. Like, at least Infused also didn't run out with any money, because people older in esports will remember several instances like this. So as you said, it could have been it could have been way worse. And the Infused guys, that they seem like nice guys. So even though the things didn't really work out with them, I hope they find a brighter future, I guess, because they have been putting results, and I think a team will pick them up soon. But yeah, I also want to tackle something else, that's kind of merged between the last two topics we discussed, and the volatility of Hearthstone and contracts. Like, Shiv, you said that Hearthstone is a bit of a streaming culture and whatnot. So, but do you think that the immaturity of the scene and the nature of the game will create more instances of these kind of organization not offering contracts to players just because they know let's say maybe they are kids, or that they cannot really count on their results being good because they are actually skillful, or maybe just slack. Obviously, in other esports scene, this has died out. But do you think this will continue to be an instance in the Hearthstone scene?
Well, in any new scene, you're always going to have the people who are wanting to do the right thing, and then you're going to want to beat the people who come in who kind of are trying to scam it somewhat. I've heard of a lot of contract deals amongst a lot of players that kind of had some really interesting stipulations, or had absolutely no stipulations and yet no payback, and you kind of had to prove yourself. I've heard this before. I mean, some of these contracts require you to stream a certain amount of hours a week for a pay that, when you actually break it down, comes down to making less than minimum wage. And then some of these contracts require you to do this on a streaming service that nobody uses. So it's like, how is this legitimate? How is this organization expecting to get anywhere when you're forcing your players to basically do something that goes against the grain, goes against the common basis of what they want to do? It makes no sense. Now, I'm not going to name organizations, and some of them were actually big organizations that were doing this too, and they found out the hard way that that's bad to do. But this stuff does happen, and I've seen these like handshake contracts. I've seen these 3-month contracts that you get absolutely nothing. We're not going to provide you any transportation costs. You're not going to get any gear, whatever, until you prove yourself within that 3 months. It's like a really bad internship, in all honesty. So we've seen this. But you know what? The community, they're learning, and they're not going to accept it, and they're going to be very, very picky. And in the case of last organization we were talking about, I don't think that they could come back without them getting a lot of backlash and nobody wanting to deal with them after what they did initially. So people don't forget as easily as some may think. It's always out there on the internet.
I guess Reddit never forgets, right? It's kind of like 4chan.
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna prosecute the hell out of you.
Oh, God, yeah.
Storex, any final thoughts on the entire situation? Like, how do you see, you know, this topic develop? Like, and, you know, a final question for the topic: do you think this was the necessary evil that had to happen before the Hearthstone scene could, you know, inevitably mature, and young kids, you know, learning how things are done and how you can get screwed over? And I don't really want to use, you know, big words, because teams will then come biting back at us, you know, trying to chase me down and kill me or whatever. But do you think, like, did this is something that obviously it's unpleasant that it happened, but something that should have happened, you know, maybe even in 2014 and not like early 2015?
Well, it's a lot like the people signing contracts, or rather not signing contracts, lack a lot of common sense, because you have to look at it like it's a normal job. Maybe not normal in a sense of 9-to-5 job, but it's a job. And so I knew that when I was 10 years old, that when I get a job, I need to sign a contract. And I can't understand how people could not know that. And so that's kind of their own fault. But on the other hand, yeah, probably it had to happen in Hearthstone so the community and the scene can grow and grow out of stuff like that.
I really hope so too, because, you know, I know that we've seen too many cases, not just in Hearthstone and other esports, as we mentioned already. Let this be like a learning experience for both Infused guys and Infused as an organization. I really hope that this stuff doesn't repeat, although, like, my gut feeling you know, tells me that this will happen a lot more in the future. But let's transition to another topic, to a more pleasant topic. Like, I want to leave the Infused thing like in the past week where it kind of belonged. I kind of apologize that I'm bringing up, because this happened on Tuesday. So it's been like a whole week of, you know, this sitting out there and people talking about it. We even satirized it. So, you know, it's kind of like at the point of beating a dead horse. But I want to, as I said, move to another topic. And SeatStory Cup III happened. Yes, happened this wonderful weekend. And oh my God, what a tournament that was, right? So 32 players, some of the best known players in the scene, some of the lesser known players in the scene. Like there was a mix of 2014 televised veterans and 2014 untelevised veterans, guys like Ostkaka and Alish, that has been playing Hearthstone since Hearthstone came out, but never really got their televised experience. But yeah, overall impressions of the tournament. Storex, I'm gonna start with you, because yeah, I've been leaving you for last for some reason. So let's throw the wheel around. How much did you see from SeatStory Cup? Did you like it? And if you don't, why not? Are you like an imbecile or something? Do you have self-respect, etc., etc.?
Well, it was pretty much the best event, with like the Wire Game House Cup, and yeah, it was great. I actually planned on going, but for several reasons I didn't.
You chickened out, right? You chickened out.
Yeah, a bit. Well, it was pretty much great. The only thing I didn't really like was like the fact that they had like planned for 4 qualifiers and then had to chip down to 3 because someone couldn't attend. And the overlay was a bit ugly, but let's be honest, the Via Game 1 wasn't pretty either. So.
No, it wasn't. No.
So besides that, the atmosphere was great. You had a lot of nice casts, nice games. I haven't watched everything, but I tuned in every few hours or so, and it was a great event. And I will probably attend the next one in person.
As a player, right? Because you're gonna win those damn qualifiers. I know that.
I don't think that.
Every SeatStory Cup, Skim says, "Oh, I'm gonna be at the qualifiers, going there, win some seat seat chairs or whatever." You know, you're pretty hyped, and you go about as far as I do, and I'm not even playing. So. But anyways, Chiv, I know that you are so damn excited about SeatStory Cup. I guess you liked it as well.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it because I got to see all these guys who were in my community tournaments and in like the old Mana Grind MLGs like Ostakaka, Toyota, and things of that nature. I got to see them actually competing in this greater event where they're getting the spotlight that they deserve. All right, 2014, you had a lot of great players come out that were being televised all over the place. But then you had this other core of really great players that just weren't getting the exposure. Now, here we are, 2015. These players are now getting the exposure. I mean, that and the whole final match, that was the best match I've seen in Hearthstone to date.
Full best of 9. Full best of 9.
Oh, God, yeah. And you know what? That was a grueling experience, and both players played to their best abilities. I had a hard time finding a single misplay or a single flaw in their decision-making. It was just that brilliant. So it was great. And I also got some, knowledge from some of the players that were there about the stuff going on. Like, apparently, Kriparian couldn't eat any of the food that they were serving there.
Why?
So,
like
he's got a special diet or vegan or something like that.
He's vegan. He's vegan.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and they were serving, like, hamburgers and pizza and stuff like that. So, apparently, Toyda's mother was actually getting him food or something of that nature.
I'm really sorry, Crip, but I cannot really approve of your vegan diet. Sorry.
No.
No.
Cows are there to be eaten.
We're here to be politically incorrect, and your vegan diet is wrong. But anyways, Kim, how much did you watch of SeatStory Cup, and what's your opinions of the event as a whole?
I watched most of it. Overall, I think it's the most entertaining Hearthstone event ever. This SeatStory in particular, I think, was the most entertaining 2, 3 days, 4 days of Hearthstone ever. Just because I like the very chill environment, and you have a lot of casters being rotated in and out, a lot of diversity, a lot of fun for sure. I like the show match between Crip and Artosis was amazing. A lot of flashbacks to better times, or older times at least. I did, however, think that the quality of play wasn't as big as I expected it to be. Like, for example, if I look at the Via Game House Cup #1, I thought it had that had probably the best Hearthstone competition overall, just in terms of like the quality of plays, for me at least. And I think this time around I saw a lot of misplays, especially in the round of 8. I thought a lot of players were still misplaying here and there, and I thought it was a bit sad. Well, I mean, I can understand there's a lot of pressure, and a lot of these players haven't really been on stream before. A lot of these players were just, trying to break through, trying to break into that sort of bracket where they become top players and become established players. And I can understand why they would misplay under pressure, but it just, just something I noticed. There was a lot of more misplays than you usually see in a Hearthstone tournament, of such scale at least.
Any misplay coming particular to mind? Because I actually didn't see the games of the playoffs until like one of the semifinals and the grand final.
I mean, the biggest misplay obviously is, I hate to say this because I like Ignite as a dude, but holy shit, his Arcanine Soul Priest play. I posted a link in the chat as well, and I can post it again if you guys want to. That's just soul breaking. I don't know. I was sitting at home, was like, dude, this game is over. And he came back from that and misplayed again in his freeze match, in his freeze mage matchup. Oh my god.
Gotta love Ignite though.
So yeah, I mean, sure, I think all of those players that deserve to be in that top 8, but at the same time, I felt like a lot of players also misplayed here and there, except for Orange, actually. I think Orange played really well overall. But yeah, overall, it's just not as high quality Hearthstone as we used to from, like, I don't know, Colento versus Strifegro, for example.
Oh, in DreamHack Winter. Oh, that was some match.
Yeah, that was insane.
I think about the funniest thing about the game that you mentioned is was actually I think Garo was commentating and he said that everybody with more than 20 games on a priest can see the lethal, and then the lethal doesn't happen, and Reddit was joking about like, well, Garo only has 19 games on priest, which I think is probably not accurate, but fits the joke, I think. So obviously SeatStory Cup, great event, but if you look back at the previous SeatStory Cups, right, where do you guys place it? Because I was attending the first SeatStory Cup and I actually enjoyed it the most. I don't know if this was because I was actually live there and chatting up the guys, or I just couldn't get hyped enough for SeatStory Cup 2 and 3. For me, having 32 players in a single apartment and split over 2 streams kind of breaks the experience for me personally, just because I want to sit down and watch one stream and don't have to click through between stream A, stream B to just get the full experience. And I also don't have the time to watch the rebroadcast because I have to sleep from time to time. So personally, I think like SeatStory Cup in its small environment with just 8 players and way more streamlined production, I think it was best. But what do you guys think, Sodix?
Well, the first one was special in a way because it was the first one and it was really great. The second one wasn't bad at all either, but the lineup for the third one was a lot better, in my opinion. And I don't know. It's hard to say which one was the best, but I so far liked all the SeatStory Cups, and yeah.
The first one also had its unforgettable moments, right, with the Hungry Crab thing.
Oh, that's what.
This
Great.
was like when I think of great tournament plays and great experience, I remember watching the Trump's Hungry Crab live, and this was something amazing. And I don't think not taking anything away from the SeatStory Cups 2 and 3, but I don't really remember any of these great plays that are really stick to your minds. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I think as Nico said, I think the first one was special just because, or like it was especially special just because it was the first one of its kind. Honestly, for me personally, I think the third one was still the best. I mean, yeah, I agree with you saying that, yeah, there's so many matches, you don't actually follow a lot of the action. I personally never tune into the B stream unless it was actually restreamed on the A stream. So I never actually caught a match there. But at the same time, I think there was still a lot of things going on for me that was just very enjoyable. I don't know, when I watch Hearthstone, I think for the most part, I just want to be entertained, and I don't see Hearthstone as the sort of classic spectator sport where you have like, oh, this one play, I'm gonna go nuts over it for like 5 minutes, and I'm gonna keep remembering for the next 5 years. I'm gonna tell my grandchildren about it. I don't think Hearthstone is that kind of game. Whereas, like, if you look at other esports, I mean, I'm always going to remember, for example, the International 4 in Dota 2. So I think Hearthstone in that regard is completely different for me. So I thought SeatStory Cup 3 was super entertaining. And I'm just going to remember the event as a whole because there were so many entertaining casters, there were so many entertaining moments that as a whole, I think SeatStory Cup was the most entertaining for me.
One thing that actually defines SeatStory Cup 3, and this has been actually a trend in new days of Hearthstone. We've seen players that are up and coming in 2015, not really known for their results in 2014 or not known at all, actually crushing everybody, breaking this established Hearthstone power rankings order, if you want, because when we left 2014, we had Kolento, Strifecrow on the top. Guys like Tides of Time were also there. Firebat is the world champion. Gara, Ecop, all these guys, they were the top dogs of Hearthstone, and nobody could really dispute it because for one reason or another, they were the ones winning a lot of the tournaments. Now a lot of the tournaments were also invitational, so they were kind of centric around them. But still, even the big tournaments like DreamHack Winter and the DreamHacks in general, and they kind of, showed who the best players are, and kind of, broke into Eggy's theory that invitationals don't really, show who the best players are. And I don't think we can say anything bad about Kolento or Firebat or these guys that I mentioned. They have proven to be the best players in 2014. But this year, man, it's getting crazy. It started with Silent Storms, with victory at ESL Legendary Series Finals. Then we had Orange winning Katowice. Then we had Ho or Ho, Danish language. Winning the House Cup, and now we have Orange again winning the SeatStory Cup III, and these are all up-and-coming players of 2015. And if you go actually deeper into the bracket, some rounds back, we also see that the top 8 or top 4 spots are also, taken by these relatively unknown players. I mean, when I say relatively unknown, I mean to the wide public, because basically everybody involved in competitive Hearthstone is as deep as we are, I guess, or as the pro players. They all know Oskaka, they all know Alish, they all know Sodal, Naiman, whatever. But the wide public doesn't know them, and this is an interesting phenomenon that I also want to do an editorial about it. But really, times they are changing. How do you guys see this, Shiv?
Well, I see this as kind of I could reference this to American sports and all that, where you have your AAA and then you get your rookie season and all that, but that'll be lost on a lot of the Europeans here. So I'm break it down in a different way. This is basically the people that the players knew were really strong are finally getting the attention they deserve. And thanks to the Blizzard point system that they're introducing, a lot of tournaments are starting to add more open qualifiers to where these good players who are not getting the spotlight time are now getting a chance to get in there, face off against the establishment, and just really prove who they are and really show what we're talking about. And it's literally next generation versus the establishment. And I got a feeling you're going to see a lot more of these up-and-coming Hearthstone players that nobody's ever heard about rising to the top. And we might see it to where players and I'm not saying this, it's just a generalization, Reynad or Kolento may not be getting as much of the spotlight as they are now. So it'll be amazing. And I love that.
It would be super curious and peculiar, in 2 months' time, where maybe the summer invitational tournament starting happening, and then you get maybe see players like Amaz or Renate, as you said, left out of these invitationals, and maybe these spots go to these younger guys, and they get more chance to prove themselves. I say it's gonna be peculiar because I think this will actually happen, because the Reynats and the Amazes still bring the big numbers, but as you said, this is certainly something to look forward to. And do you actually see some of these rising guys actually becoming the terrors of 2015, or there might be still a chance for the old guys to come back?
Actually, I do see it. I mean, you look at Orange, you look at Faramir, Ostakaka. These are three of some of the strongest players I have ever seen. They're tactical, they're smart, and they get the job done. And I'm even going to throw in a couple other people here, Toyda. All right, he 3-0'd RDU in Conquest format, which is a very difficult thing to do. Very difficult in Conquest. So, mad respect for that. So, I think the underdogs, the non-big, huge 10,000 viewer stream players, that's where the new future is going to be going. And I'm happy to see that. I am so happy to see that.
Do you guys think that the open qualifiers are the only reason for this change of pace and change of power ranking in the Hearthstone scene, or there are like other factors like the new Conquest format, or maybe like the old guys. Old guys, how does this sound? Like the 2014 veterans, getting used to each other and not really expecting a new guy to come up and punch them up and make an upset. Skim, what do you think is the case here?
I think it was a natural progression, to be honest. I mean, Hearthstone is what in its, I guess, second year now, or like, yeah, I guess it's been
actually, yeah, it's now the
It's
second.
kind of 2.5, really.
Yeah, but like the only the second year where it's really a competitive game, and maybe even like 1.5 years. I don't know. Anyway, it's still at the very beginning, and I think it's just a natural progression of any competition. That at first you're gonna have a lot of, it's gonna be a very tight knit sort of like net and cluster of people who are going to be involved in all of this. But at some point, when the scene is going to evolve, I think it's going to just be natural to see young talent coming up and pushing away or edging out these sort of old dogs, just because that's just natural. You'll also see some old dogs who got edged out fighting their way back. I think it's not necessarily something that's format related, because I think this could have also happened if we had last man standing. I think it's just that the Hearthstone grew as a scene so much that it attracted so many people and forced so many people to be a bit more passionate, to be a bit more sort of like, oh hey, I can do this as well. This is so easy. I can totally do this. I mean, technically, you just have to win a qualifier of like three or four steps, and you're in the tournament already. So that's the beauty of Hearthstone.
Yeah, basically this is my sentiment as well. Like, these guys are the best ambassadors the game can have, right? Just because they're like the American dream of Hearthstone. I don't know if this is like an adequate comparison, but it's the closest I can get. These guys coming from basically nowhere, making an effort to say, win 7 or 8 qualifier matches there in the big tournament, win 5 or 6 more there against the big names, and because it's Hearthstone, anything can happen. And suddenly they're in the headlines. The media are talking about it. The writers are writing stuff about them. People are tweeting about them, etc., etc. So, Sorex, do you think like how to phrase the question? Because we already established that this might be like an open qualifier thing, being brought up. Do you think like this should be expanded even further? Maybe consider let's say 80-20 distribution between open qualifiers and invitationals, just to have more opportunities to find these young talent, because still we have 50-50 is the minimum for BlizzCon points, and this is where most tournaments stop. They don't really consider, okay, well, I'll just invite 4 guys and the other 12 will be open qualifiers. Nobody's really trying this, and nobody is also really trying big open major tournaments that are completely open. Now, me and my journalist colleagues have argued that this will never happen, just because you have to have invites, right? At some point, if you want to justify numbers. But could these shifts in the scene be advocates towards at least increasing the number of qualifier spots in major tournaments, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, and it should definitely be done, because just like you said, since we started using more open qualifiers, more new names came out, more new players have done well in tournaments, and that helps a lot, not just for a fresh win, but also for giving more people the chance. And if I was to organize a tournament, and I may be even involved in some in the future, I will try to get more spots for open qualifiers, like not like 80-20, because you just can't do that. You need the numbers of invites to be a bit higher, so you get viewers and stuff. But most of the time it's like 80-20 for invites, and 20 for open qualifiers, and I don't really like that. That's a bit like it's just not healthy for the team. So I'm definitely on that. with more open qualifiers.
Yeah. I think like the 50-50 rule that Blizzard appointed is actually good, is because you can balance between known guys and give quite a lot of chance for new guys to come up and make a name for themselves. And I'm really curious to see how the scene turns out. When's the next major, guys?
DreamHack Bucharest.
DreamHack Bucharest is the next big major, and they will have a lot of open qualifier players there. I mean, I think there are a total of 32 players coming from various qualifiers, and also there will be some guys that have bought tickets, and that they will take part in the tournament. So, what do you think about will happen at DreamHack Bucharest? Because we have only 8 invites. Which is way less than the 32 qualifier players. Ultimately, they will be tied in amount in the playoffs because it will be a 16-man bracket, and the top qualified players will fight against the invites. So, do you think like DreamHack will be the next upset? I'm not sure if we can even call it an upset, because it's actually the other way around. If an invited name wins it, now it's getting weird, because it's not the case in 2015 at all. Chip?
Well, I think that, trying to speculate who's going to win a tournament like this far out is really difficult to do, mostly because we haven't gotten all the BRM cards out yet, and that could change a lot of things. And also, as we saw, the favorite isn't always going to win, because, let's be honest, RNG does happen. We've seen decks that are like 70-30, and we've seen the 30 beat the 70. Left and right. We've seen that so many times. So it's so hard to predict who's the favorite and who's going to win. Even the people who were voting during SeatStory, everybody was all over on orange. Okay, they were correct. But as Astakaka started coming back from that deficit, you saw it swing dramatically the other way, because they saw the comeback coming and they wanted to be a part of it. Yeah, fair weather fans, yay. But hey, things happen. They really do. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what happened, and I want to see if we can get any more hi moms in Romanian on the screen.
Okay, let me then ask you a question that has let's say a more solid answer. Out of the guys that are coming up now in 2015, where are your eyes fixed? Like, who do you think are the guys to watch for this year? Obviously, don't go with the orange, because we already know
that's too easy.
Yeah, that's too easy. So aside from orange, and looking back at tournaments like House Cup and SeatStory and like Katowice and Legendary Series, like these were the 4 major offlines. Who do you think is the player? Who do you think are the players that have the biggest chance to actually break out this year and be the guys to beat in 2015?
Well, I'm going to say Astakaka is probably going to be right at the top there. I love that cheesecake bastard. Tice is another one, though. Tice is almost quite established, but not all the way. But I think he's definitely going to have a good year this year. I want my boys Stude and Carlos to actually do good, but we'll have to see with those two. Other than that, Alesh, again, already kind of established. And it's really difficult. But one other one I really want to see is Faramir. I want to see him doing more. And I think he can. He's definitely got the skills for it. And I think this might be the year he actually shows the rest of the world what he's got.
I don't think that's fair. He did amazing in 2014, right? Like
he did a little bit here or there, but then there was like a slum where you didn't really hear anything, and now he's starting to come back again. And I think this is where we're really going to see him shine.
Skim, who are your picks?
I think in general you should be looking out for the Trick Esports trio. I think Powder and Faramir especially, I'm looking forward to see them compete in many, many tournaments this year. Outside of those two, I guess I think China is going to be really strong as well. I mean, at the Via Game House Cup, I mean, you saw how strong they can be, and I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if we saw an Asian BlizzCon champion this year. I wouldn't be surprised at all. So I'm from Dota, so I'm always fearful of those Chinese dude. You never know, man. Chinese do everything to win, and they're so disciplined, they're so skilled as well. So yeah, for sure, I think China is gonna have. If they're not good this year, I think they're gonna be really strong next year. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Tilla Celestial at or who else? I don't know. I keep forgetting the names, but just being at the top.
Yeah, it's a funny thing you said because I follow the Chinese scene rather closely as you can do as a Westerner, basically, because there are very few opportunities to actually see the guys play and be casted in English, right? I think the NEL was the sole exception with the China versus Europe, but this was not really a Chinese event per se. And what I can tell you is that, true, the guys might be misplaying a bit more than the Westerners. There are like weird plays that most of the guys will disagree. We saw it in NEL a lot. Like I was watching with my buddy Callum Leslie, who's now writing for the Daily Dot, and we were tweeting about, I should follow the Chinese scene more, and it's gone because this guy just made a huge misplay. But what I can tell you is they're hell of a serious about the esport there. They have 5-digit tournaments regularly. These are attended by thousands of people, and I don't just mean like 1,000-man bracket at Zotac Fields on Sunday or whatever. I'm talking about like 5,000 or 6,000 people showing. Like right now, as a comparison, the qualifiers for the Gold Series are happening. These are played offline and have so many people. It's unbelievable, and they're streamed. Like qualifiers are streamed. This is very unorthodox for the Western scene. Like maybe you stream some qualifiers for the biggest tournaments, but not really. These guys are taking it so next level. Like IG, Newbie, Vici Gaming, all the big Dota names that have won millions and that are owned by the richest people in China. These guys are now in Hearthstone. And what I can also tell you is that they are so different in their metagame. Like they build stuff that nobody really expects. Like a lot of people were talking about Tiller Celestial's mage deck that actually wrote a guide some time ago, and nobody knows how this deck works. I can tell you, I've played this like 100 games on it. Saviz during what was it, like House Cup, I think, he said that he wants to see the master playing it because he has no idea how this works. And this comes from Saviz, one of the biggest geniuses in Hearthstone. So these guys think, I think, like nobody else, and a few more tournaments, and a few more steps towards developing the Hearthstone scene, and you might be right, Schema. You might see some big Chinese name like coming ahead. We all know Tidler, we all know Magic Wind, I guess. We all know Run and Gun. Some of the Chinese guys that attended BlizzCon, but there are also talented Taiwanese players as well who are playing also on this server. We know Roger, who just finished, I think, second in the Legendary Series and second in House Cup. We also have Ping Ping Hao, who's also been great in ESL Legendary Series. These are great players, and nobody's really talking about them. And I think in the end, this will be might become West downfall because they don't research. They might not be aware of what's happening in China. Sorex, yep, Chip.
Okay, I was about to say you're absolutely correct on this. When you look at like some of the Asian, like the Taiwanese, Korean, and the China's meta, I mean, even going back to last year where they had like it was NAEU and China and Taiwan and Korea all in one event. What was that? The WCA, I believe it was, or WAC, one of those.
WCA
too many
was
letters.
won by China. WCA, the 200K tournament. They had two
Right.
Chinese in the.
Right, it did. You look at that tournament, and we saw some really interesting decks in there. Suck You Lock being one of them, and I don't mean it was a bad deck. I mean it's like drain life throughout it. But previous to that, we saw some interesting meta shifts with exploiting head crack quite nicely. And that's something you would never see in the NA or EU metas. Nobody would dare even try that. But yet they're over there. They're trying to innovate new things, come up with new metas that nobody could ever really expect. And I applaud them for that. I think that's great. And I think that's exactly what Hearthstone in general needs. And you're 100% correct. It will be the West downfall if you do not pay attention to that, if you do not look to see where your new competition could be coming from. And let's be honest, when it comes to esports, that market has a real strong basis in comparison to the Western market all day long. All right. I mean, Dota, LOL, even World of Tanks. My God, they are dominating that. So, yeah, the West better wake up and start paying attention. Seriously.
I think like Western players that are paying attention are, actually doing really good in Western tournaments, because I don't know how many of our listeners or viewers know this, but the Valen Stalker aggro priest with the Death Lords and the Valen Chosen, this came from China. And people still say, "Oh, it's Savice's deck." It's not Savice's deck. It's Chinese players' decks. And it's if you go even back in 2013, I'm not sure how many of the listeners were around even, because it was really, I would say underdog, like undercovered scene, Hearthstone in general, let alone China. These guys actually came up with the strategy of the Ancient Watchers, taunting them and using them with Shadow Flames. Like, these things came from China. And we kind of forgot about it because we thought, well, yeah, the Western guys invented it. But in a lot of cases, it's not true. But enough derailing the topic. Storex, your picks for the up-and-comers of 2015?
Wait, before we get to that.
Okay.
So what you're saying is Reynet is Chinese?
Yes.
Okay, I just needed to wrap that up. Okay.
Reynet is Chinese, and he's also Trump and Amaz and Frodan.
Okay,
I mean,
that makes sense.
this is basically why he hired Frodan, so he get double the salary. This is known fact.
It's actually smart.
Yeah. I mean, how else are you going to make money? It's not from streaming. So yeah, aside from the conspiracy theories that are absolutely real, I'm not sure how can you dispute it. But Storex, back to you, buddy. Let's say the top 3 players to watch in 2015 from what you've seen so far. No orange.
No orange. Okay. My boy Firebed will probably still be doing really well.
How is this an up-and-comer of get out of here? No, Firebed is not.
Nah, come on.
Your boy Firebed.
I need to have one of the old schoolers.
Okay.
Old schoolers.
I'll allow it. Okay, but no more old schoolers.
Roger, this seems to be really, really on fire, and Maverick seems to be doing pretty well too. So. And if it's a third up-and-comer, that's hard. The guys from Athletics are pretty good, like Jab, Muzzy. They're pretty good right now. Yeah. And they all have been doing pretty well recently, so you could see them winning something again soon, I guess.
I'm really surprised you guys missed out Inderin and Nyman, actually. Because Nyman, this guy is what, #1 legend every season just because, right? I mean, people will now come and say, well, the guy only plays Hunter, so you kind of, pew spam steady shot and ta-da, #1 legend. But this guy's a fantastic player. He just recently got picked up by Dignitas. I think there's a bright future ahead of him. Like, he's probably going to the BlizzCon final qualifiers, because I think he'll just keep getting first every season, because that's his thing now. Like Hunter and now Hunter, he does it. And when he actually goes to offline tournaments, like we saw him in Gfinity, he finished top 4, if I'm not mistaken. And you can't really only play Hunter in Conquest, so you have to play other decks as well. And Inderin is like the guy that I think was up to par with Orange up until Katowice, because I actually thought that the winner from their matchup will win the whole thing. And Inderin also won back-to-back qualifiers, and in my book, this was the guy to watch in 2015. Like, obviously, he's still lacking a major tournament victory. He didn't really do well in House Cup, so I'm kind of sad to see him go. In a negative score, but definitely one of the guys to pay attention to. And you said Roger, I will add him to this list as well, because I like China, which Taiwan, China, same thing, right?
There's actually one more. It's Sir Christian. Can't forget that.
Oh, our boy. Honorable mention to our boy. Yeah. Sir Christian, for those of you who don't know, he is a fellow GosuGamers crew member that won StrifeCro 3-0 in what, like 6.5 minutes using Mech Mage, Mech Shaman, and Face Hunter. So, you know, I think we are the only guys that actually love him because you know,
Cancer.
yeah, you go on stream and you triple cancer StrifeCro. You cannot really be the community's favorite in new champion, right? But come on, man. We love Christian. I mean, he has balls to go and do this to StrifeCro. Come on.
That's almost as bad as my boy Fire actually 3-0ing Firebat with Zoo. All right, that happened shortly after he won the BlizzCon championship. They faced off in I believe it was either a Zotac or an ESL, and he just beat him with Zoo.
Zoo is kind of good. Zoo is kind of good.
Yeah, it's gotten better.
I actually value Zoo way higher than Hunter and Mech Mage. Like, I know that Zoo used to be the cancer, but right now I take Zoo over Face Hunter or Mech Mage any day.
Fair enough. Actually, Zoo is coming a lot stronger these days, but we will try to get back to the Blackrock Mountain topic if we have time. Now I actually want to bring up the main topic of today's conversation, and it's about tournament formats. I know this is a topic that's been told and retold and discussed and rediscussed like thousands of times, but there's always players being vocal on Twitter about how tournaments should be handled, and I think like in the wake of SeatStory Cup III and via game House Cup, I think it's a good time to actually revisit the topic. So starting with the main culprit, the Conquest format. Now a brief introduction, I guess, is needed. Conquest is like the official 2015 tournament format. For BlizzCon, and it's kind of like the complete opposite of last year's Last Hero Standing. So when you win with a deck, the deck is locked out. So you kind of have to win one game with all your lineup to win the matchup. Kind of a big shift compared to last year, obviously, going to the diametrical opposite, and understandably this has sparked a lot of conversation. A lot of players say that tournament matchups have become more like ladder. In the sense that it's always kind of like a blind pick. You cannot really, use your Druid deck and just trio Tiller Celestial in the finals. Well, other players say that, well, it actually brings some more variety to the matchup, So let's start there, with the plain and simple Conquest. Storex, I know you're a very, very vocal guy on these kind of topics. If you put Conquest to the Last Hero Standing, just these classic formats, what are the pros and cons you're seeing with the 2015 Conquest?
Well, as a viewer, obviously it's pretty nice because you don't see all these 3-0s and shit like that, because you actually need to win with 3 different classes and 3 different decks, and from the viewer's perspective, that's pretty nice. I personally haven't played too much Conquest yet. I tested it out a bit and I liked it. It has its own kind of strategy to it, and it's very different from Last Hero Standing, so can't really say much more. But I personally like it a lot, and I'm not alone. Actually, earlier today I asked Savish about that, and he said he likes it too, because it although people are not giving it much love, it actually has a strategy attached to it and stuff like that.
Actually, Fantasy, one of our co-hosts to be, is actually saying that I see no trios but a lot of boring 3-2s, yay. And this is kind of it's a fair point, because we've seen this school of Conquest lineup and Conquest strategizing where you don't really build a solid lineup per se, like by itself. You build your lineup to beat a certain archetype. So, if the meta is, let's say, aggro, you would bring a lot of anti-aggro decks, because, you don't really have to go trio. You just have to, single this one deck of your opponent and just crush it, because even if, let's say everybody will bring Face Hunter or maybe Mech Mage nowadays, at least 90% of the time that's the case, you will see an aggro deck in the lineup. So players will bring these anti-aggro decks a lot, and they just shut down one archetype. And sure, you don't see a trio, but at the end you see one, a Face Hunter trying to win against Control Warrior, and this will never happen, right? So, well, okay, never. It's, as you said, like sometimes the 70-30s go the other way around, but generally Warrior is pretty favored, and you see these, one-sided games where your hard counter decks lose against the more standard decks, but when they come down to shutting down the deck that's left, they do a very good job, and then the one-sidedness turns the other way around. Chiv, do you think like this makes Conquest more boring to watch, like compared to the last hero standing?
Not really. From the viewer perspective, Conquest is probably a better thing because you're actually getting to see more of a lineup. It's not always the winner is going to keep on dominating with this Druid deck, which, as you brought up, happens way too often. But at the same time, from player's perspective, if you lose, you're kind of being punished by having to play the same deck again, where your opponent gets to change to something new. That's not always in his favor. And I do like that they've expanded on Conquest to add the whole, Resurrection, Redemption, or whatever they call it, to where you could bring a class back. And we saw that in SeatStory being used in a very strategic way, but that kind of backfired on somebody. But hey, it was still cool to watch. So, I don't know. I've heard arguments from both sides of it. I know casters love it. I know players are not overly happy with it. Some players think that they might be able to exploit it by basically running 3 of the same type of deck. Yeah, no, I've had that discussion with people. It's bad. But all in all, I think it's healthy. We always need something new in Hearthstone, because if it's the same thing over and over and over again, then people are going to lose interest. You got to change it up. You got to keep it interesting. I think this is a really good way of doing it.
I think one of the arguments I saw somewhere on Twitter, or I'm not sure where, I can't really quote the guy who posted it, so I'm sorry, but he said that last hero standing was good towards the players who would invent a good archetype, bring it to a tournament, and then get to use it to crush other people. Just because if you win with a deck that nobody really knows how to play against, you're kind of rewarded for your innovation, right? So let's say you bring Mill Druid or Control Hunter, and you somehow make it work, and nobody really knows how to play. If it's a short tournament and you don't give the players a chance to adapt, like let's say people will eventually adapt if there's like a 1,000-man bracket and you see all the matches, but let's say in a top 8 bracket and you bring this Control Hunter and you only need to win three best of 5s or whatever, and you're the champion. So yeah, it's like saying Kagura Priest, yeah, basically the same thing. But still, I'm just giving these weird examples just to make my point. You make a weird deck, you somehow make it work. People don't know how to counter it, and you're rewarded just for your deck building. Yeah, I'm fake, Nico. I mean, I'm not fake. I'm not even the guy fake. So, what do you think about this comment? Like, is it like a legitimate defense of the last hero standing format, Skim?
Can you repeat the question? I just kind of phased out.
So people were saying that if you, in the last hero standing, if you bring a cool deck and nobody really knows how to play it, as long as you keep winning, you'll keep the deck, and you might keep winning more and more. And in a way, you're rewarded for your deck building innovation. Well, in Conquest, you cannot really do it because you can only win once with a deck. So if you bring this super amazing Control Hunter that somehow works or whatever, you cannot really get more than one win in the series. While in last hero standing, it's the other way around. If it's good enough to crush every deck that exists, you kind of should be rewarded for this.
But at the same time, it's also an exploit. Just because, I mean, Yes, as I'm also saying in the chat, like you should be like if you're a good player, you should be able to adapt to a good deck anyway. So if somebody has some sort of like super strong new deck that he's invaded himself, that you should be able to sort of figure it out if you're a good enough of a player. But I think at some point it's also an exploit because there's a lot of matchups where it's just literally coin toss whether you win or not. Because sometimes it's just really 50-50 whether you win with your face hunter or not. Because it's just there's a lot of RNG involved, and I think Last Man Standing sort of, I don't know, it sort of encouraged this whole oh hey, I got really lucky with this matchup that I should have lost, and now my opponent has only really bad matchups left, which I super disliked about the Last Hero Standing format. I do like Conquest with ban though, well, we've seen one ban, but I'd love to see it with even multiple bans. We saw the Via Game House Cup tournament, where you have actually like pick and banning phase, and I'd love to see this adapted to the Conquest format, sort of. Unfortunately, they used Last Year Standing, if I'm correct, but yeah, I love to see him, with a bit more, a few more bans.
I think one of the worst things about the Last Man Standing was that it was supremely snowbally. Like if you win the first game, you would more often than not win the series because you're one counter pick ahead, right? Unless these weird scenarios happen where you lose a matchup that you shouldn't, or vice versa. I think it's like if the decks line up as they should, the matchups, the guy who wins the first game is always ahead because he's one counter up. If this makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you're trying to say. Yeah, I get what you're. Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Okay, so talking about the modifications of the tournament, SeatStory Cup and House Cup both had their own versions of how a tournament format should work. Obviously, House Cup kept the last year's big ban phase with all the 9 decks, while SeatStory Cup had a normal Conquest with just ban phase. So I've spoken to a lot of players and they've hella love the VAG game, format. Like they say that this game before the game thing is absolutely the best thing to happen in competitive Hearthstone, just because you're kind of playing your opponent before you actually start the Hearthstone game, right? And this really proves who the best players in the tournament are. And we actually saw Colento in House Cup last year. He was the guy that won it all, playing against Tamaz in the finals, right? I'm not making up stuff. Yes. So people were already regarding Colento as the best player of in Hearthstone at the time, and then he won the most demanding format in the most demanding tournament of them all. So this is kind of show them that yeah, he really is the god of Hearthstone. And a lot of the players say, yeah, this is how a big major offline event should be held, with this elaborate pick ban phase, kind of like Dota, like the MOBA games have. Skim, I wanna start the conversation with you here, just because you're coming from a Dota profile and you're very familiar with how pick and ban phases actually affect tournament games. So is this a good thing to have in Hearthstone, or does it add a lot of unnecessary complications?
No, absolutely. I absolutely think it should be in Hearthstone, and I'm actually kind of sad that Blizzard did not involve this for BlizzCon, because I feel this is truly testing the abilities of a Hearthstone player, being able to read his opponent and forcing him to actually prepare for opponents individually. Not only do you have to prepare lineups that work in general, but you also need to know what your opponent feels comfortable with, so that you target the bends and your picks towards his lineup. And as from Dota or even League of Legends, even CSGO, you have a lot of these sort of mind games going on by picking and banning certain elements of the game out. Like you either ban heroes, champions, or you ban maps even that that your opponent feels comfortable with. And I think this sort of stuff adds an additional layer of skill to the whole game. I mean, so far, the only sort of skill that's required is being able to just, play your cards right, mulligan correctly, evaluate the RNG that's coming out. But this adds the whole not playing the game, but playing the player sort of element that you see in other card games, So I'd love to see more of these sort of VI game host cup formats where you actually have an extensive ban and pick phase. Sure, it may seem a bit boring because they're sitting there for 5 minutes and just picking their classes, but I think it's actually quite interesting to see how players sort of tackle this this aspect.
I think you say boring. I think this can actually easily be solved if you have like a. Obviously, this cannot really be done for every tournament, but if you have like a dedicated analyst desk and proper, graphics to exemplify and to walk you through the pick ban phase, because this is something that I absolutely love in MOBAs like Dota and League of Legends, because you sit through this 5 minute pick ban phase, sure, but then you kind of start seeing how teams or player strategy work, and there's like an extra layer of strategy there. Something that we don't really ever see in Hearthstone outside house cups. Sorex, do you think like the VI game tournament format should spread to other events? And because I know that people have been making the other argument that it's kind of clogging the tournament schedule, right? It adds extra minutes to every match, so it might alienate the viewers like during a long broadcast. Like let's say you have 10 matches today, and for everyone you have to do like a 5 minute pick ban phase. That's like an extra hour of broadcast basically. How do you see this?
Well, I actually love that format. That pick and ban is awesome, and I wish more tournaments would actually implement that. And well, those extra 5 minutes, it's a lot because you don't see what they pick and ban most of the time, and there's not like someone analyzing, like you said, that could have like explain why he probably did that or did this and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a bit more time consuming, obviously, but unlike games like Magic the Gathering, where you have like a sideboard and one deck throughout the whole tournament, I always felt like Hearthstone is a different kind of game, where the focus is not just on mastering one deck, but on mastering all the classes, all the decks, as much as possible. And so this format kind of hits the spot for me on that one.
Chief, you've organized and ran a lot of tournaments as a tournament organizer. Like, let's say you're running a major offline tournament next month. What do you
Actually,
consider?
I will be, but yeah.
What are you running then?
Well, I do tournament stuff for Battle of the Best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
let's pretend that you're in this actual real situation. What format do you choose? Like, do you consider House Cup? Do you consider like Conquest or modified Conquest? The pros and cons of the VI game formats.
the pro side is very strong. I mean, players in general have not adapted to it, obviously. That's why there's so many complaints of it. I know the fans love it, and I know the casters love it because it's not the same match over and over and over again. But at the same time, it really you really have to think about what it is you really want to put out there. And sometimes, you know, some organizations actually kind of get limited by contractual obligations with sponsors of having this, that, and the other. Luckily, that's not going to be a problem here in the future. But personally, I would like to see Conquest. I really would. I think it's good to actually use the format that Blizzard is going to be using for their big championship tournament, because running anything else just kind of seems like wasteful, because all these tournaments are supposed to be preparation for that big event. So if you're running a tournament that's not in the same format as that big event, then it doesn't really prepare the player at all.
Okay, I want to continue the topic about Conquest, and we mentioned when we started the discussion that an argument about the Conquest format is that it brought the tournament experience closer to the ladder experience. Now I know that there have been people that are liking this a lot, just because they think that this connects the esports fans with the casual fans, and they can kind of relate to what they're seeing with what they're experiencing like every night when they put in Hearthstone and start playing the ladder. Well, other players, and myself included, they think that tournament and ladder experience should be completely different, and tournaments are tournaments for a reason, and ladder is ladder for a reason, and you kind of train in one to become good for the other, right? So tackling this topic, do you think like this has actually happened with Conquest first and foremost, and if it has, is it a good thing or not that we are bringing ladder and tournaments together? Skim?
I think the big issue in that regard is that just personally for me, the ladder experience is actually not that great. I don't know. I think, yeah, Nico agrees with me. I mean, a lot of people have already been very vocal about the fact that ladder is just not. I mean, it's just not rewarding or interesting anymore, and ladder needs to be improved. And there's been so many discussions. So having a competitive format being adapted to a shitty ladder experience, it's not the best idea probably. I still think Conquest is fine in that regard, but I wouldn't necessarily use the fact that it's very similar to the ladder experience as a positive example or argument for Conquest, because in fact I'd argue that it's the negative side of the whole format.
So do you think in the end that this is true, that Conquest is more similar to ladder compared to Last Hero Standing in other formats?
Well, yeah, I think so. Yeah, for sure. I've noticed this in tournaments. It does really feel like, yeah, you're playing on ladder, honestly.
Storix, you're kind of making this face of I disagree kind of expression.
Kind of, because Last Hero Standing always reminded me of playing ladder, because like you just take the most overpowered deck and crush your opponents, and then you lose 2 games and then crush another 5 games or so. So I don't know. I see more of a connection between ladder and Last Hero Standing in that way.
Chiv, as the tiebreaker.
I don't really see any of them anywhere near ladder, because you can't ban Hunter on ladder. Enough said. You hardly ever will hear this phrase in a tournament. It's always Hunter. No, you'll hear that all the time on ladder and streams, but in tournament, no, because everybody bans Hunter. They ban the most aggro class they can because their decks are weaker against it, and they do that deliberately.
That's actually not entirely true. If you look at Via Game, actually a lot of times Hunter got through. Even though there were multiple bans, people let it through because, well, some apparently thought they could, play against the Hunter, but you can't play against the Hunter.
Could.
I think Warlock got way more bans than Hunter, if I remember correctly. I have to look at the ban stats, but I think people hated Warlock the most just because of these new Demon Lock archetypes that, yeah, they're kind of really strong. Yeah.
But pre-GVG, it was every tournament is you ban Hunter the most. I actually started running statistics on this, and Hunter was banned 70% of the time. And then you get to post-GVG, it dropped down significantly because, well, Mech Mage was so annoying and nobody wanted to deal with it. So it actually started breaking even, and then Mech Mage started coming back. And now here we are, BRM, and people are starting to change that again. And it's a little bit all over the place, but either way, I would still like to be able to ban a specific class on the ladder. And until that happens, I can't really say that tournament and ladder are coming closer together.
I don't think this will ever happen. Like I know that we all fucking love it, but I don't think this will ever happen. It's not like StarCraft. Yeah, Starix.
That's actually something I would like to see as well. But since I know you can't just ban one class for eternity, you kind of have to work around with that, like banning a class for the next 5 games, and then you're not allowed to ban that again for X amount of games. That kind of thing would possibly work, I think, but I don't see it in Hearthstone in the game. I would like it. It reminds me of Warcraft 3 with like, yeah, I choose that map and you choose that map and stuff like that, because that was always fun to see.
Yeah, I don't think that this will ever happen in Hearthstone, just because I think if you make the comparison to Warcraft 3, it's more like, okay, I don't want to face orcs for 10 games because of Blade Master, right?
Yeah.
So I'm banning orcs for the next 10 games, and this never happened in Warcraft 3. This was never a case in StarCraft 2, obviously, and I think this is actually is going to harm the ladder experience just because, well, I fucking love playing Hunter, so what can you do about it? Maybe I control hunter and not the face. Like I'm the good guys, playing the control hunters. So
There are no good hunters.
There are no.
I'm giving
no
out
good
free
hunters.
There
wins.
is no
I'm the
control
good
hunter.
Actually, I faced a control hunter today on ladder.
How did it go?
It was garbage.
Oh, okay.
See?
So probably it's not fake playing it.
No,
He's
it was
a
definitely
good
not fake.
hunter. He's giving out free wins.
Yes. So yeah. Applause to this control hunter that's kind of giving free wins. Okay, so let's continue talking about formats, but go another direction. Now we already covered televised tournaments, and we all obviously have different opinions about it. But what about open tournaments, like open qualifiers, open cups, that don't have the opportunity to be policed and administrated as well as televised tournaments? Like in tournaments like SeatStory or House Cup, you can actually make player pre-submit decks and then be careful about what they're playing, so people cannot really do their own thing. But in open cups, and I've admitted more open cups that I'm happy about, and this is never a pleasant experience because you cannot really control anybody. We've been trying to impose certain restrictions in our tournaments, like banning, like saying you cannot play two decks of the same, two archetypes of the same class, right? But this only restricts like obvious archetype swings, like Demon Lock to Zoo or whatever. But you cannot really ever know if this guy is not switching between a Demon Lock into a Demon Lock with two big game hunters or something like this. It never happens. And I've actually had this conversation with guys like Number Guy and Blackout while we were hosting the PGL qualifiers, because it's for tournament organizers like myself and Yuchiev, that it's always a struggle about finding a tournament format that works in cups that cannot be policed or admin, because really our administration power ends at solving conflicts that can really be screenshotted or whatever. So let's start this conversation with you. You have an open tournament. How do you structure it?
Well, I mean, you've got multiple ways of doing this. You could do a Swiss tournament, which, everybody who's ever played card games knows Swiss tournaments. They like it. It incentivizes, keep on playing. Unfortunately, the whole tiebreaker score dynamic really gets screwed up with people dropping out in the middle of it. You've got your single eliminations. You got your double eliminations. You got whole bunch of slew. There's even other formats like Highlander, which is something I'm really hoping takes on in Hearthstone, because that's an amazing format.
Can you explain what Highlander is for the...
Basically, your deck consists of one of a card. You can't have, say, two Consecrations. You can't have, two True Silver Champions. It can only be one, and you're limited to a max of two Legendaries.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think this is something that Magic the Gathering uses a lot, at least in casual.
Yeah, Magic the Gathering had a whole slew of different formats that we came up with during, Alpha, Beta, Arabian Nights, Antiquities, and things of that nature. We were playing around with those formats left and right in the comic shops, and it's nice to see that people are trying to bring that same flair to Hearthstone. But in a tournament environment, open tournament environment, trying to police things, it's really difficult, because there's not really much there. In Mana Grind, we only required people to give us their deck list once they made it to a certain point, which is normally the top cut of a Swiss, or if they made it to the top 4 of the MLG stuff that we were doing back in the day. And that's how we kind of limited that. And that's kind of a nightmare. Now, there is actually a tournament platform you can use called Battlefy, which has these interesting little things where you can add prerequisites to it, and you can require people to just put in, their deck list on there. And that's only seeable by the admin. So that's one way you can kind of police that. But again, that's a lot of extra work for the admin to do, because you got to be watching these games. That's going to require a stream. So it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible for an admin to 100% police everything. So you have to rely on basically the honor code with your players. And I'll tell you right now, 99.9% of the player base is actually pretty upstanding and honest. But there's always going to be that 0.1 that wants to try to push it. And that he's the one who ruins it for everybody.
And he's also the loudest.
Mm-hmm.
The what? Sorry.
He's also the loudest.
He's
Yeah.
always the loudest.
The vocal minority, man. It's a thing. So
Mhm.
what is then the? Let's say I think format-wise in terms of brackets, I think like people are saying that Swiss is kind of probably the best thing, at least compared to single elimination. Because I think single elimination is crap myself, but I know I run it because I have no other choice because I cannot be really stuck at for 15 hours, managing like
Yeah.
a big Swiss like 500 players. How do you Swiss it? You cannot really do it in one day.
No, you can't, because even with 500 players, you're still looking at 10 rounds, and depending on how many matches you allow per round is going to really add up. Before they introduced the whole challenge mode timer on there, that was horrible. We were looking at like 45 to an hour for best of one. All right, that was a nightmare scenario. Now that that's introduced, though, that actually can get reduced quite a bit. So even a best of three would take maybe 30, 45 minutes at max, and probably less than that. But the problem is the rest of your tournament cannot advance until the last grouping finishes, and that can drag out. It really can. And then, when people drop out, they don't let you know. Then there's that disconnect right there that adds more time delay because you're trying to get a hold of this person because you don't want to award a win for somebody who just went to go use the bathroom and then comes back, finds out that he's lost out. And it's a really difficult thing. It really is. And you have to have communication with that player base. And therein lies the bigger problem. How do you actually have that communication system? Because they got to report their wins. They've got to, hey, if there's a conflict, they need to go do something here and they don't want to be X'd out. I mean, your VoIP options are kind of limited to some degree unless you get like that non-for-profit status license from one of the providers. But even still, it's a little difficult. So being able to solve those, that's the real challenge for an administrator. But once you've got those solved, it's so much easier. It's so much easier. And by the way, text chat does not work. Just say that right now. Text chat does not work.
Obviously, the end goal for open tournaments is to bring them as close as possible to live events, right? So how do you do it? Because I've been, I've been experimenting with stuff like, okay, we'll play Conquest, but because we cannot really lock down a player to a certain class lineup throughout the whole tournament because you can never know what he played in different rounds, right? Like you don't have a observer mode or well, we have observer mode, but you know what I mean, like something that you can see his past games, like what he played. You obviously cannot really lock him down to a certain lineup, so we kind of like in Gosu Cup Southeast Asia that we're running now, we said, okay, we're playing Conquest, in the sense that if you win with a deck, it's out. I mean, with a class. But before Conquest, we will do like a pick ban phase, where a guy picks one deck, the other guy picks two decks, and this happens until you pick your all three decks or something like this, which is kind of the how to put it. The cop-out solution we figured out. I think Zorak also used it for the PGL qualifiers, and we also used it in our PGL qualifiers that we hosted. Do you think this is ultimately a good solution that brings open tournaments to televised Conquest tournaments as much as possible, or is there another better way?
No, I think you should actually bring it to televised. And it has multiple benefits. One, it keeps the players honest. Two, it gives more opportunities for sponsors to get involved in the procedure and thus create more hype around these qualifiers. And these qualifiers are what's going to drive a lot of things. If you got people wanting to get into this qualifier to get to this bigger, huge tournament that's got this big money, you're going to drive interest. You're going to drive more attention to it. That, in the end of things, from a financial standpoint, is a win-win for everybody. So I really think that they really need to put more of a focus on these qualifiers. Yeah, the big name events, those are great and everything, but you really want to get community involvement, that's how you do it.
Is it really that much of a win situation, though? Or like, is it even remotely interesting, though? Because I, as a consumer, as a spectator, I don't really care for these open qualifiers, to be honest, especially when there's so many people involved that I don't even know of. And even if there are people that I know of, how interested am I in an open qualifier that, quite frankly, doesn't even have an immediate effect on the overall outcome of the tournament? Oh, okay, 6-0 is gonna qualify through, I don't know, some sort of Swiss bracket. do I really care too much for that when I could, I don't know, watch at the same time KPL or Amaz streaming his ladder experience? I don't know. I think it's just something in general that open qualifiers have never really been an attractive format for viewers just because they're open qualifiers.
Right. I mean, it is kind of a difficulty because production-wise, you can't really do it like you normally do because an open qualifier with like more than 128 people, you can't just do an individual game. You're going to have to literally like pick and choose as you're going, and you may not hit that one match that's really going to incentivize the viewers to keep on watching and all that. And they can't really build a bond with the struggle of like said player as they're going through the brackets and all that. So that is a negative aspect of it. But at least it gives a little bit of a showcase to these players as they're trying to get there. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to get at. Like these unknowns, these up-and-comers, I really wanted them to get more of a focus than they've been getting. And I think this is kind of a way of doing it. It incentivizes the players to really try in it.
Sure, fair enough. Storix, what do you think?
I don't really have an opinion on that, honestly. It's really hard to say what the right way to handle it would be.
Okay, yeah, fair. Now then we're stuck in trying to figure out stuff on our own then and getting shouted at by players who get eliminated by an admin decision or whatever. This is always fun when it happens. You kind of feel, what did I do?
I've only had to do that 3 times in my adminning career.
Well, that's... I think you're pretty lucky with this number, actually.
Well, yes and no. One of it was so blatantly obvious and belligerent about it that he had to go. Like, he's like, oh, he said he's playing this, but yet changed to a different class and then to another class and then to another. I mean, for only bringing 1 deck, he brought 9. Oh, wow. And got caught.
Yeah, that's 9 is more than 1.
Exactly.
As the math shows. Okay, we have, I think, 15 more minutes until we hit 2 hours. Obviously, I wanted this to run shorter, but I think we're having a nice shot, so I can bring up another closing small topic, and it's about Blackrock Mountain, because it's been out for 2 weeks now, and people are trying cool stuff with it. We've seen Green Patron Warriors, we've seen the return of Zoo, stuff like this, and I've written an editorial already. I think like Blackrock Mountain is the step in the right direction as far as competitive Hearthstone goes. But as how do you guys see it? Like looking at, we know all the cards that are going to be released ultimately. We now have, I think, about 10 of them, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe less. I think, yeah, Shift is counting.
I think it's about 10.
12.
Or something.
Okay. It's actually 12 because
sure. So
2 class per wing, so boom boom, and then the 4 and 4, so that's 12.
Okay, so we know the cards. We've already played with some of the cards. Looking at the overall expansion in the state of Hearthstone and comparing it to GVG and Naxxramas's expansions, do you think, like, do you join me in this notion that this is the step in the right direction as far as card design goes? Storix, I know you grind a lot of ladder and you're a guy with opinion on pretty much everything that's game related on Hearthstone. Looking at Blackrock Mountain, do you think we are going into where Hearthstone should be as a game?
Yeah, absolutely. The problem with the RNG in Hearthstone so far is that you don't really have ways to manipulate them. A lot of the RNG you can influence in any way. You can influence Sylvanas or Ragnaros, but you can't influence what spare part you're getting and stuff like that. What comes out of the unstable portal, and that's like a direction I really don't like. I'm used to Magic the Gathering. I've played it for like 15 years now. And even though a lot of people say Magic is more random than Hearthstone, I always disagree, simply because there's a lot of manipulation you can do. You have more card draw, you have deck manipulation, you can use Mars to find the best spot for like your lands how many lands you play and stuff like that. You can do a lot of optimizing you can't really do in Hearthstone. So, seeing as Blackrock Mountain doesn't add like so many random stuff, especially stuff that you can influence, I really like that way, and I think they should go that way even further.
You think they should eliminate all RNG cards basically? I don't think they ever will, because I think they like this idea of Hearthstone being, fun and, explosive, like goblin-y and gnome-y, in a way. So, but you basically think that they should, keep it to a minimum then?
Yeah, they should, for the sake of the competitive scene, to a minimum, at least for like the high impact cards. Like I don't like the fact that a lot of cards with incredible randomness are like high impact, like the Boombots and Dr. Broom. That's like, it's like game deciding, and you can't really influence that at all. And yeah, Ragnar's, you can at least influence Ragnar's a bit, but you can't influence how much damage Boombots do and stuff like that. So I would like them to reduce like the high influence card for competitive gaming with RNG that you can influence. If you can influence, that may be even a good thing. Like more cards which RNG you can influence, maybe exactly what they want. They want players to play with RNG and show their skill in like how they can adapt to the RNG and stuff like that. But you can't really do that much when the outcome is like totally random and you can't influence it all.
I guess you could say there's good and bad RNG, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, randomness will never disappear from card games, and whoever thinks this will be the case is fooling himself. And I'm not just talking about card draw. I'm talking about really, random cards. Obviously, Magic the Gathering has kind of weeded out over the years. Like we don't see any, like coin flip cards anymore. I think like the last one I remember is like Ignite Memories, where you would, show cards from your hands and random and deal damage. But this was also, in the same alley of controllable or influenceable, what's the word, RNG, right? So but I think like, RNG will remain a thing in Hearthstone, but I'm definitely happy to see it being toned down in Blackrock Mountains. Skim, the Chiv, you feeling the same way, guys?
Yeah, actually I am. One thing I'm happy to see with BRM is the Emperor. This guy has pretty much come in, said, boom, I'm here, deal with it. And he's enabling so many more things. We're seeing like super powerful Force of Nature combos. We're seeing the possibility of combo-centric decks coming back just because of that reduction that he provides. If he sits on the board for more than one turn, it's a nightmare scenario for any player. So he's changing the course of this game. And we look at what's coming out this week, as a matter of fact. The Paladin Dragon. That is going to be another swing right there for Paladins. The Dragons in general are going to change quite a bit in what we see, obviously for Paladins and obviously for Druids because they have ramp built into them. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's going to be quite amazing. And I would really like to see this game return more to a slower pace and not aggro, and be more of a mid-range to control oriented. I would really like that. I'd really like to see the pace slow down somewhat. But aggro is always going to exist. It's the equalizer. It's the balancing point for any game. So I'm all right with it.
Skim, are you loving your Blackrock Mountain so far and looking at it in general?
In general, I think, yeah, I like the hold mechanic that they're introducing with Blackrock Mountain. Although I think at some point they should just add a word for it, like instead of just explaining it to whole length in every card. Like, every card is like Death Rattle or, these effects like Death Rattle, Battle Cry or something. They should invent something for hold as well. Because I think this... Yeah?
They're really lazy with keywords. Really, really lazy.
Yeah, I agree. So I think...
Well, they're kind of testing it out before they give it a keyword, I think.
Yeah, that's true. But I think it is a mechanic that is definitely has a future in Hearthstone. As for specific cards, I don't know. I feel like obviously we don't have the dragons just yet, and yeah, there's going to be a dragon deck for sure with Paladin. But overall, I feel like it's a bit weaker. It's a bit weaker in terms of how much impact it's going to have on the meta as compared to GVG. But it's obvious. I mean, that's obvious considering how many cards GVG introduced and how crazy those cards were as well. But I like just the nature of those cards. Emperor Trithian, sure, some people think he's crazy. Some people think he may not be as crazy. I think it's interesting for sure. It adds, I mean, we saw it at SeatStory Cup, right? There were so many actual fun and interesting combos run just because suddenly cards cost like 2 mana instead of 6. Suddenly you can run triple combo if you want to. Well, you don't have the cards with triple combo, but...
You got Force of Nature and Double Savage.
Yeah,
on turn 10, that's always fun for you when you're playing it.
So yeah, in general, I think I like it. What I don't like is how Blizzard introduces expansions. I don't know. I feel like it's a bit expensive, isn't it? And also a lot of new players. I mean,
you haven't played Magic, have you?
No, I haven't, to be honest.
That's why you're saying that.
I was about to say, he's talking, oh, it's a little expensive. Oh, you've never played Magic. Oh my God. I mean,
but still, it's really difficult to keep up as a new player. I feel. I mean, I've started to create an NA account because I wanted to play on NA a few times here and there, but it's super difficult to just get any deck going. Even the aggro deck these days is expensive as hell.
I feel you, bro. I feel you.
Yep.
But yeah, overall, I think I like the cards. I'm very excited to see what the Dragons behold. And I actually like the storyline from Black Rock Mountain as well. Like, there's a bit of a story there, right? With how, you're there to help the dragons take down Ragnaros, but suddenly the dragons take over. And so I like that aspect, even though it's a bit, it's basically, nobody actually cares about that. Everybody just wants the cards. But I think it's a cool sort of like gimmick.
I'll bring you to this topic of releasing expansions, but I want to talk about Taurison just a bit more. And you guys seem to like it, and I actually like it a lot, even though I think it's maybe a bit too powerful. But what I don't like about the card as compared to pro players who only discuss its trend, I don't like it that it's an auto-include and that it fits, this 4, 5, 6, 7 curve of Shredder, Lotheb, Thorison, and Dr. Boom. This is something that Firebat mentioned in an interview for in Daily Dose like Loadout. He said that it's turn some number comes and you just play the best minion in your hand, and when you have Thorison, you won't probably have a better minion than him unless your hand is absolutely empty. So yeah, I think this is my actually only concern about the card, not really its effect, but just because it's the best 6-drop that everybody wants to run now. How do you guys feel?
So like Dr. GG?
Yep.
I mean, it's just, sometimes you don't even have to think about it. You just drop him on turn 7 because, I guess, yeah, that's sort of the bad side of the card, but at the same time, look at Lothab. Lothab used to be that card as well. It was almost an auto play on turn 5. I mean, not always, but usually we're okay with it. It's a good 5-drop that you had in almost every deck, even in Zoo, just because it made sure that the opponent couldn't play any board clear. But it faded out over time because people realized that, yeah, sure, the effect is amazing and it's a good card for 5 mana, but at the same time, you kind of want to play different cards as well. Some decks don't even need to use them anymore. Is the same going to happen to Emperor? Not necessarily, but at the same time, I don't think a card is necessarily bad just because it's an auto-include in a deck.
Okay, fair enough. I guess we'll have to say, I think like Lothep is a bit different just because of the strategic implication it has. You basically lock a player for a turn, and you have to play it at different points of time when you're facing like different matchups. Because let's say you're playing against Zoo and you want to drop it on turn 5 because they're not gonna play any spells besides maybe like Power Overwhelming or whatever. But against Druid, you wanna time it just before their combo. Like same with Freeze Mage, you just want to drop it after Alexstrasza, and the guy goes like, well, I'm screwed now. And I think like Torreson is has a way more leeway in this case, just because if you have cards in his hand, he's already good. It doesn't you have just because your cards are always gonna be good, right? You're not putting stupid cards in your deck. So if you can make these already good cards cheaper, you're winning.
Personally, I like dropping the Emperor right after I do Thought Steal combinations. I get a whole bunch of really expensive stuff off a Druid. Then, oh, by the way, here, have an Emperor. Oh, and I got your other Emperor? Well, guess what? Guess what's coming down next turn? I've done this before, and it's cringe-worthy so much to the opponent.
Double Emperor
But it's so much value. Yeah, double Emperor is perfectly fair.
It's like double Doctor Boom. Like they sap your Doctor Boom and you replay it over and over again, and this is amazing. I guess for as a Doctor Boom player. Okay, guys. I think we're just approaching the 2-hour mark, so I guess it's way past time that we shut up and let people go and sleep if they're EU time zone, or go to work if they're NA time zone, or actually, get their lunch breaks if they're, still NA time
Actually, it's
zone.
more like get home from work right about now. It's almost 5 p.m. here.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So some people have Twitch in their cars, man. That's pretty fine. And so
That scares me.
yeah. So thank you a lot, guys, for listening and staying with us for these 2 hours. The show will return on Monday at 9 CET. We'll have more topics for you. I'm sorry if there were any technical fuck-ups, and we really are running this for the first time. And oh shit, yeah.
I'm the one who had to watch his language.
Yeah, sorry. I really apologize. I know that some of our listeners are really not fond of profanity, as they should be. But watch out for us. Next week we'll discuss more topics. Again, apologize for any technical screw-ups, that might have happened. This show will also be available on iTunes as quickly as we can figure this out, and hopefully this time iTunes works properly, because we had difficulties with previous podcasts. So Apple, please don't ruin this for us, please, as you do everything else. So thank you guys for listening. We will be coming to you next week. Guys, any closing words, starting with Skim?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to next week. Blackrock Mountain is cool. Emperor is cool. And peace out. Shout out to Fantasy for being too stupid to walk.
Yes. Chiv, any final words from you, man?
I want to quote the Grim Patron, but nah, screw it. Thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed this. I can't wait for the next wing, personally. That's all I want. I want that next wing because I want to play with my paladins more.
Everybody wants it. Nico,
Oh, yeah.
Nico, final words from you, buddy.
Yeah, I agree. I want the dragons. I want to show Kibler who the Dragon Master is.
Yeah, because obviously it is you.
Yeah, maybe. Also, leather sucks. I forgot to mention.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, follow us, guys. You can find me at GG Nitro. You can find Skim at Skim Gaming. You can find the Chief at DShiv1. Where's the one there? Like, is there like the Shift 2? Like
Somebody already took the Shiv.
scumbag. Just
I know.
these scumbags. Wow. Whoever you guy. No, I don't like you anymore. And follow Nico at StotexHS, and follow my work and our work at GosuGamers HS. I will see you guys next week. Thanks for being here.